Hi, this is Joseph Phillips. In this presentation, we're going to take a look at collecting project requirements. It's something that every project manager has to do when they launch a project, is to understand what the stakeholder expects to be a part of the project that's about to commence. So a lot of this has to deal with working with your stakeholders and communicating with your stakeholders. And so one of the fundamental things you'll need is a stakeholder registry. A stakeholder registry is just like a phone book. It's all the contact information and all the details and the particulars of what the stakeholder wants in and out of the project and how to communicate with that stakeholder. One of the most common techniques you'll use is just to interview the stakeholder. And there's a little bit of some terminology you'll need to know. A one-to-one means it's one person to one person. A one-to-many is like in this picture here where multiple people are interviewing the stakeholder. Or you could have the inverse of that, where that could be the project manager interviewing multiple users. And then we have many-to-many, and that's where we have a whole lot of people gathered around the table interviewing each other and participating in the conversation. Now, a focus group is a good example of many-to-many. A focus group means that everyone participates and contributes, but it's a moderated event. There really is someone who is leading the discussion, but they're not really participating in the discussion, and that is a neutral moderator. The participant composition is important because you want to have people that represent what the project focuses on. So for example, if we were to create a new piece of software that's rolled out to our entire organization, we might want a real dissection of people, of stakeholders in that group. You might want application developers and database managers, but you also want the users and functional managers and the sponsors and anyone that touches it. Now, it may be that you want to gather very specific technical requirements. So then you may not include like the functional managers and the users. You focus in on the database managers and the software developers. So there's some thought is the point here, that you have to have some thought that goes into who will participate in the focus group. Now, a requirements workshop is where all of our stakeholders go, generally off-site, and it could be for multiple days, to really hone in and focus on what goes in to the requirements. We capture all the requirements at the beginning of the project. This is too is a facilitated activity. Our goal is to find some consensus among all of the stakeholders. In manufacturing, you might know this as the Joint Application Design Workshop, or you might know it as the Voice of the Customer, and that's also tied to quality function deployment. Quality, remember that quality is the totality of an entity, so it's a conformance to requirements, and that's why it's the quality function deployment. How will you get quality deployed if you don't have accurate requirements? Another approach we can use, especially when we have multiple stakeholders coming together in a workshop, are group decision techniques. First off, unanimous, that everyone agrees to what we are going to include in the requirements. We have a unanimous decision. We have a majority decision where more than 50% agrees. We can have plurality where the largest block of stakeholder agrees. Now that one's a little tricky. Let's say that we have 3 different factions of stakeholders. Let's say we're going to create a piece of a new website, and part of the group, they want the background color to be green, and another group, they want it to be black, and another group, they want it to be light yellow. Well, we could take a vote, and whichever one of those groups has the largest percentage of stakeholders, that would be the color we had for our background. Now, it's the largest block, but in that example, you might have the combination of the two that are against the winner is more than what the winner has. But it's the largest block is who wins the decision. And then we have a dictatorship where the power decides, where the project manager or the sponsor or whoever's paying for the project could make the decision. Surveys are a good example to collect requirements. It's ideal when you have a large group of stakeholders. And of course you can do a paper-based survey or a web-based survey. One approach that's become popular, especially in more complex activities, is stakeholder observation. Sometimes this is called job shadowing, where the stakeholder observes, or is observed rather, by the project manager or an analyst. A passive stakeholder observation means that the project manager does not participate, just watches. And an active observation means that the project manager interrupts the workflow and asks questions and may even try to do the work herself to understand it more clearly. Prototypes are a good tool that you can use, especially when you're trying to express an idea to a customer. A throwaway prototype might just be a mock-up. So if you were going to create a website for me, you might just design or draw out what the website looks like. And obviously that's not a real website until it's functional. And that leads us to our next prototype, which is a functional prototype. In that same example, you might go into your web design software, begin throwing some things together to give me an idea of what you're going to create. And then if I like it, the time you've invested creating that prototype, you can use that example to actually build the final website. So that's a functional, that it actually has some use to it. A throwaway is just usually a mock-up, that it's not a whole lot of use for the customer.